and share. Okay, recording chapter 6 now. So, uh, in chapter 6, business value discovery, I should mention the chapter goals when I talk about these chapters. Those are important too. In this chapter, we learn about how to avoid the three crimes of discovery, understand how to maintain focus on the business issues and avoid the technical distractions, and be able to gather the problems, results, impact, and evidence for key business issues. Um, so, discovery is a continual process. Throughout the sales cycle, you want to constantly be learning. You don't want to shut out new information. You want to adapt and um, improve your sales pitch by learning as much as you can, hearing feedback, and integrating that feedback into your pitch. Um, don't get married to any one concept. Maybe you love a feature on one of your products, and it's something they've told you they don't want to use. Don't keep selling it to them. If it's clear that they don't want to use it and there's not a good fit, don't keep trying to sell that just because it's your favorite. Um, the tag acronym in here, I think, is very fitting for mistakes. It shows you three mistakes that are made often in discovery. The tell, accept, and guessed. Uh, tell is a reminder to make sure you listen to the customer. If you're telling the customer everything, it's really hard to get feedback from the customer. And they gave the example that they timed one of their 1 hour business sales calls, and the sales agent talked for 48 minutes, the customer talked for 12 minutes. And they said that if you're trying to do discovery, that should be flipped. You should the customer should be talking 4 times as much as you, so you can learn as much as possible about that. So ask probing questions to get some detailed answers. Um, Next is accepting. Be careful about accepting what they say at face value. Push back on the requirements to find critical need, meaning that if they tell you this is what they need, ask them why. It's like, I need, um, they'll tell you I need X, and you say, well, why is that? And when they tell you why they need that, and you realize, oh, you don't need X, you really need Y and Z, because Y and Z takes care of X. This is, you think you need this, but let me show you why you really need this. Um, you need a way to get to school, and you want a horse and buggy, but let me show you why a car is better. If you accept the fact that they just want a horse and buggy and that's the only thing they'll settle for when they've never seen an automobile, you're doing yourself a disservice. You need to say, look, I've got a better solution for you. I know you asked for this. I know you want this, but have you taken a look at this? Do you understand this option? Now, again, if it's clear they don't want it, you don't keep trying to sell it, but you want to make sure they're aware of the options and why it's a better option. Um, and the third one is guess. You don't want to guess, just ask. Don't, you know, don't assume you understand or guess you know the answer and say, oh, well, I guess 20,000 is too much for them, so I'm not going to ask. I'll only ask for 10,000 for this. Um, don't guess, just ask and say, could you handle 30,000 in the budget? What's your budget for this? Um, you'll be surprised sometimes how businesses work, and how it's just normal business to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on certain products and certain services, and they don't where it might seem huge to you, it might not be anything big to them. Um, it's like in Congress, they throw on billions of dollars of funding, like it's nothing. You think millions are big, and it's like, oh, Congress will allocate $1 billion for this, and it's like, wow, where's that money going to go? What's it going to do? Um, so make sure that you are asking and getting the details, and not you know filling in with your assumptions. You want to get the information straight from the customer. Um, Another important thing, knowledge is key. Do your homework before you meet with executives. You want to know their issues, and have a solution at hand, because if you don't understand your customer, if you have them framed wrong in your mind, you might present things that aren't in the best interest of them, or not interested in them at all, or won't interest them at all. Um, I I've had some issues dealing with this, where you know if I've gone really prepared into a meeting and know about a person I'm meeting with in the organization, I can suggest things and I can really show that I am knowledgeable about their situation, and that I am you know a I'm someone they want to work with, and someone that they could trust to help them with their problem. I had a meeting I still kick myself over it. It was a meeting that happened, oh, 4 years ago, and it was with the governor of Pennsylvania. I'd actually been able to get a meeting with him pertaining to a nonprofit that I help run. And I set up a meeting for I'm the vice president of the nonprofit. I set up a meeting for the president to attend of the nonprofit, and an associate of ours who was running for a state house position at the time. And we had a meeting scheduled with Governor Wolf. I had previously met with Governor Corbett on this issue and had a really productive meeting. I came in armed, prepared, read up on the guy. I found out that not only, when you meet Governor Corbett, that he was from my hometown area. Like he grew up, his family was from near me. But not only that, but my parents had actually taught his kids in school, and they had met him on several occasions when they, at open houses and everything, back when he was a local district attorney or something like that. And so I had a personal connection with him that I could reference, that, oh, your family's still in Shaler. My parents taught your kids in school. How's so and so? I could mention the kids by name. How, asked about his kids. I came in really prepared. We had a really great dialogue, and I came out of that meeting with $300,000 for our nonprofit in a year where he cut $1 billion from education. So for education nonprofit, we were able to land $300,000 in funding, and he slashed other education funding by $1 billion. Now, fast forward to Governor Wolf, where it should be an easier sell to get educational funding from Governor Wolf. I go in, and the guy the president of the nonprofit works for Pandora, and we sit down with the governor, and we mention our backgrounds. First of all, the guy not only works for Pandora, but he went to MIT, where the governor went to school. So they have a connection over MIT, and they talk about certain professors they both know. So they made a good connection there. Then he asked questions about his tech support on his Pandora and why his phone was running slow, and why it wasn't working well. And I, trying to be helpful, offered my opinion on tech support. I should just let the Pandora guy handle it. I knew nothing about Pandora, and I was like, yeah, my phone, when it gets it's slow, it's usually because it's clogged up with like a bunch of videos of my kids and pictures of my kids, and so I find if I clear that out, it helps speed things up. Maybe if too many pictures of kids or grandkids or something. Not doing my homework, not knowing he has no grandkids. He has 2 daughters and no grandkids, which may be a sore subject. So I brought up something which I don't know how he feels about the fact that he doesn't have grandkids, and it showed my lack of attention to who he is. And then to double down on it, I mentioned it again later and said, oh, maybe it's just those pictures of kids and grandkids. When they couldn't solve the problem, I reiterated my solution and doubled down on it, with not knowing how far I was putting my foot down in my mouth. And I had, through that meeting, had ended up having terrible rapport with the governor. The guy from MIT and from Pandora, got along with him really well. So I learned I actually just shut up and let him run the rest of the meeting, and didn't contribute much after that, when I realized I was not connecting well with the governor. And we came out of that meeting with no prospects, no money. There was a small promise, but nothing came of it. And it was unproductive. So I really wish I'd been prepared better for that meeting, and also known when to shut up and let the governor do the talking, instead of me trying to chime in with something and sound like I'm contributing when I really don't know anything. So learn from that. Knowledge is key. Do your homework. Know who your executives are. Know who the decision makers are, and know who to talk to. The other thing I've learned since then is that in Pennsylvania politics right now, the governor has very limited control over budgets. The legislature has more control, and we've successfully now gone through the legislature, and we got $300,000 in funding from the legislature last year, instead of actually going through the governor. So we worked our contacts in the Republican legislature, and got funding directly from them, and so it was a different approach. And I recently helped another organization in a meeting with some representatives. I sat in and I watched their presentation, and I gave them a lot of notes afterwards, because they did not do a good sales pitch. They it was all advocacy, no ask. They didn't, they talked about why funding for the arts is great, but they didn't talk about why their program is great and why their program deserves to be funded. And it's like advocacy is great. You don't need more than a minute on that. Tell them why your program is important. Um, and sell your program, not don't sell everything, sell your solution. Like it's like automobiles are great. You can make them fall in love with the concept of automobiles, but if you don't make them fall in love with a Tesla, they're not going to buy your Tesla. So stick to the topic and make sure um, you're selling what you're selling. Um, Cost impact comparison. Do you create value? This is huge. How much does your product or solution or software or service cost? And how much of an impact will it have on the company's bottom line? This is the key number for the decision makers. What is it going to cost me, and what's my return on investment? How do you create value? Um, when if anyone's taken 60/50 with me, where you manage a shoe company, you learn that one of the key indicators there is that return on investment, how much money you put into the company versus how much you get out of it. That are and if you're taking like financial analysis, return on investment is a key indicator of company health. Um, so return on equity, return on investment. And so if you can show them where the cost and impact, and I talked about the solar roofs last time. If you can sell me on a solar roof and say, here's a cost of a normal roof, here's the same cost for a solar roof, um, you know, why wouldn't you get the one that can generate money for you? I was talking to a guy today. I have a need to repair carpeting in my van. There's a really bad stain in there. That we need to get out of it. And we were talking about cost, and said, well, there are two options right now. It's you either to replace it, you have to lift up all the carpet, buy a new one, and put an all new one down, or to clean it, you gotta take up all the carpet, treat it, steam it, and everything, clean it, and then put it back down. And there's no guarantee that that cleaning process will get that stuff out. Um, and he said, well, and if you look at the labor, you know, you're going to have labor in cleaning versus cost of the carpet, and the cleaning might not even work. It's it's probably better that you just get the new carpet. And that's actually doing him a disservice, because he's not getting the labor money for cleaning. My money's going to, instead of paying him to clean it, I'm just paying for removal and install and buying carpet. And he was an honest salesman. He said this is the cost breakdown. And if they're going to be about equal, why not just get new carpet? So I trusted that sales assessment. And now we're looking at like off-market stuff, or stuff out of junkyards, to even save on that instead of getting new carpet, see if we can get some used carpet for it. So cost impact comparison, again, do you create value? Is this something that if they buy, they'll get their money back out of, or it'll add to their bottom line? I think there was a cost impact example. Well, they had a cost impact calibration matrix. So that's the other thing is what's their perception? Because that it's worth stating with them and say, okay, first of all, what do how do you view the cost of what I'm proposing? Because you could think that your cost is inexpensive compared to the rest. They may think it's astronomical because they haven't priced out the rest. So until you do that calibration, say, look, we're actually the lowest price competitor. If you contact anyone else, you're going to find at least double this price, because they do this, and this differently, and they can't give you the same value that we do. So making sure that those costs are in alignment. And then the impact. You may see it as a big problem in their business, and they don't, and you haven't sold them on that, or they may see it as a bigger impact than you realize. And if that's the case, if they see it as a huge impact and you didn't realize it was, you have a lot more negotiating ability and say, oh, okay, maybe my price should be a little bit higher because it's going to make such an impact. I can charge a little more because it's going to be so much value to them. So you might have some pricing strengths there to work from, to get a better, to give a higher quote and potentially get a better profit margin, because they're in need of your product and there aren't good competitive options to choose from. So compare that table 6.2 compares those perceptions. One of the most important things that this book says, one of the most universal truths of business, can be found on page 68, and it really boils down all of business, and says every business issue can be reduced to a single number. Either that number is too large and someone wants to make it smaller, or the number is small and someone wants to make it larger. So either your profits are too small and you want to make them higher, your expenses are too high and you want to make them smaller, your workforce is too small, you want to make it larger, you've got too many people on payroll and you want to cut that back. Everything that you analyze in business, if you look at it when you're doing sales, it's either a number that's small that wants to get bigger or a number that's big that wants to get smaller, and you have to figure out where their number is and which direction they want to go with it so you can sell the appropriate solution to help them deal with it. So the art of being a pre-sales engineer is to find that number, the direction it needs to move, and by how much, what is that movement, what that movement is worth to someone, um, to the person who has the budget control. So what is it worth to move that? If you know what it's worth to move that, then that gives you a lot more leeway in pricing out solutions to fit within what it's worth. Give them some higher end solutions, give them some more costly options, and see if they'll go for a higher quality solution because it's so important to them. The other thing that this chapter has is very important is table 6.1, which is examples of data-driven non-technical discovery questions. So they give you who, when, where, how much, how many, what, how, and why. All these questions that you can ask, that as part of that discovery process. Just the example, the who ones. Who is impacted the most by this problem? Who owns the equipment? Who is the first person to complain when it breaks? And they give you all these wonderful discovery questions. Do I mention them? Yeah, I reference them in the questions here. So the questions we're going to discuss is more about TAG, the three crimes of discovery. We're going to talk about that first law of discovery in your own life. So the first law of discovery from here, numbers becoming, getting bigger or smaller. So cite some areas in your life where that applies to work, school, or your personal life where you have a number that you want to change. And then table 6.1, we'll talk about additional questions. So, we have the questions that are on that list, but there are more that might be specific to your discipline of engineering or your work experience that you might want to ask or consider beyond the scope of this table. So let me stop the recording now so the students who are not here can go to the discussion board and type out their responses. And stop recording.